Good to see you all. As you can see on the screen, I decided to have a Middle East report today. A lot of things are happening, but some of the things I'm showing today you may not even have heard of. So let's get into it. The first one's going to be kind of fascinating. I had to include it. It is that Israeli scientists have actually recorded plants speaking to each other. Now, there was always the idea that plants talk to each other. That's been around for a long time. But they actually listen to them and record it. And they have. In fact, if you read the article, you'd find that different species speak different languages. How about that? Most of the time when they talk, it's in clicks, like popping of a popcorn. So they did this on a number of species, and they found out that each species has a different language. Each plant phylum has a different language, and when they say that, I often wonder, well, does that, because do rodents and insects and things, they eat only those things that they know and hear are beneficial to them, these other ones what they know are poisonous to them? I do believe that God created communications in all of his creation, and so here's what one quotation: we assume that in nature the sounds are emitted from plants and are detected by their neighborhood, whether that be bats, rodents, various insects, and possibly other plant species that can hear them in the high frequency that they dominate. Now, they say that when they speak, it's in the same volume as I'm speaking here right now, but it's in such a high frequency that you have to have the equipment to pick it up. But when they pick it up, it's just as loud as I'm talking right now. They say it's just a normal human language talk. And some of the plants that they looked at were wheat, corn, grapes, tomatoes, tobacco, and cactus. All right, so much for plants talking to each other. It should indicate that how marvelous our God is that he created all these things just the way he wanted them. All right, let's go to the next subject. The next subject is that Israeli launched a new spy satellite. It's called OFEC 13. And it was launched on the 30th or 29th of March, so about 17 days ago. And they're testing it now, and pretty quickly it's going to be operational. The ministry described the OFEC 13 satellite as in a low orbit, and it goes around the Earth in about 90 minutes constantly. It is a new spy satellite. All the OFEC satellites are spy satellites. So now they're up to number 13. They have a much upgraded photography equipment on board. And the information they get back in views of Earth, especially around the Middle East, is going to be analyzed by an Israeli intelligence group called 9900. Unit 9900 is, and because of this satellite, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Unit 99. Before I do that, the guy on the left in the black is the defense minister, Yoav Gallant. I don't know who the other gentleman is. All right. I want to talk to you about Unit 9900. Since I just mentioned it, that they are going to be using the information that's coming from this spy satellite, I want to tell you just a little bit about it, because this unit has always fascinated me. Not because of what they gather, but who they are. For 8 or more hours every day, soldiers in the Unit 9900 observe images that have come from satellites or drones or even on real live time from airplanes. And with the new technology that they have, they're able to see things and observe things almost in real time. In fact, in real time if they're in an actual battle. They can provide information to those in battle either on the ground or in the air of all their surroundings that they are observing while they're up there or down there. One of the things that has always fascinated me, as I said, it's not what they do but who they are, is that the majority of the people that are in this unit are on the autistic what they call it, spectrum. They're on the autistic spectrum. And the reason they are given this kind of classification of top secret is because they have an enhanced ability to perceive images and see where changes take place in real time. And I've always thought this was a fascinating thing, and I think it's great that they're able to serve in the military, whereas in other parts of society they might have difficulty. And I just think that is true. See what else I have on them. They provide information to soldiers in real time. They can see things that are happening around the soldiers or around the air that the pilots or the soldiers on the ground might not see, because they can see things change that I might not be able to see, because they can look at an image one day and then look at it another image the next day of the same place, and they'll see things that have changed, whereas I look at it and it looks like the same image. They can pick out just the minutest detail that's changed, and if it's changed, then why? They go into to try to determine why. Is the enemy doing something? Have they put something there? Or have they taken away something? Things like that. So I think that's a great group. The next thing. This happens every Easter, but it's every Passover. I don't know why that slipped my mind. Passover. And it doesn't happen very often, but Passover and Easter and the Arabs' Ramadan all occurred pretty close together. Ramadan's not quite over. It's a 30-day event, and it's going to be over this next week. But Passover and Easter were close together. Some weeks they're 3 or 4 weeks apart, and because of the Jewish calendar, mostly because of the Jewish calendar. But every year, the Orthodox Jews put in a request if they can sacrifice an animal on Passover on the Temple Mount. Every year, they're told they can't do that. It's insightful, they say, to those that the Arabs that are on the Temple Mount and that worship there. But each year it kind of gets more accepted. I don't know when it might be that they will be able to do that. But here's the Orthodox Jews believe this is a commandment from God to do on Passover. And they would love to do it. They wonder why and there's no wonder really to it. You know that there are Samaritans, just like back in the days of Jesus, there are Samaritans in Israel today. And they do observe the Passover, and they do have a sacrifice. The only difference is it's not on the Temple Mount. And the sacrifice that Samaritans did back in the time of Jesus wasn't on the Temple Mount either. They had their own society, but they go through it. Nobody pays it much attention, although thousands come from around the world to witness the Samaritans sacrificing on Passover. It takes time for things to change, especially between two groups that don't like each other. 100 years ago, to tell the Arabs that one of these days there's going to be a nation here and they're going to be Jews would not have been accepted. It would have been insightful. 80 years ago, if you said that Jews would be able to get on the Temple Mount and pray while they're on the Temple Mount, they would say, no way. But they're doing it today. So, how about the sacrifice? It's not done today. When will it be allowed? And there is coming a time. We'll get to it more in our future lessons when we talk about rebuilding the temple during the tribulation time. Temple number 3. See if I had anything else. Oh, yes. I said I won't tell you much about this until we get to a lesson, but let me give you 2 scriptures. One is by Christ, and he quotes from Daniel, and then I'll go to Daniel. It says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Jesus is talking about a time when there is a temple. He says, how can the person being talked about is the Antichrist. When you see the Antichrist standing in the holy place, it's talking about being in the temple. How can he be in the temple if it's not built? So it will be built one of these days, and sacrifices will occur. And he's quoting here from Daniel, and Daniel says this in Daniel 9:27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 7. The he here is the Antichrist again, and the 7 is a group of 7. In this particular case, when we went through this in detail in a previous lesson, is speaking of 7 years. So he will confirm with many. The many is Israel, with many for 1/7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offerings, and on the wings of the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him the Antichrist. Here it says again that he will cause sacrifice and offerings to cease. You can't do that to cause them to cease unless you're already doing that. So one of these days that is going to happen on Temple Mount, but just not right now. The next one. Now you might wonder, what's this got to do with the Middle East? Stick with me. Finland joins NATO and is accepted by NATO, and her flag has been unfurled in Belgium. In Belgium, yes. What's the city? Brussels. Brussels, Belgium, just this past week. Now, let me see something. This is a map. You can see Finland up near the north there, and you can see that it has a border with Russia. A long border with Russia. In fact, it's 840 miles. Here's a wider view of Finland with Europe, and you can see where Russia is. Can you see my cursor? Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's try it again. One more. Russia over here. Also notice there's Russia down here. All right? That is a province of Europe that belongs to Russia and is controlled by Russia. And the name of the province is Kaliningrad. And it's important to Russia because unlike if I were to move this cursor up to the end of this sea here, where St. Petersburg is located, Kaliningrad is the only one that has a 12 months of a year. It isn't frozen over. It can bring stuff in through the port at Kaliningrad. Now it's surrounded. Kaliningrad is by Lithuania and Poland and Belarus, and they have to get their trains from the port through those countries in order to get to Russia. And in the past, the train has always gone through Lithuania, and Lithuania said when Russia invaded Ukraine, we're going to stop allowing the trains to go through us, and that they finally let them do that. But for a while there was quite a discussion between the countries. Now, why did I bring up Finland at all? The day after they were put into the NATO, they made a call to Israel and says, we want to buy your not our Iron Dome, but David sling from you for our extended protection with Russia. So they have a contract of some $360 million to have the David sling. Now, most of you have heard about the Iron Dome. You may wonder, well, what's the David sling? Israel has three types of anti-missile warfare. And let me show you, this is what the David sling looks like. It's mobile. It's you can take it to wherever you think you have a problem. But it's also the middle of these three here. The Iron Dome is on the left. That's short range. The David sling is middle range. And then you have ballistic. The arrow is a ballistic missile. And so that's the reason I wanted to show it today, is because they have purchased a number of David slings to enhance their own armament that they have because of what's happened in Russia. A week and a half ago, before Easter it was, Israel was inundated with a number of rockets from places they had not received it before. 34 rockets were fired from Lebanon into Israel. At the same time, 2 or 3 were fired from Gaza into Israel. A day or two later, 6 came in from Syria. Nobody was hurt. Well, one person injured from the ones coming from Lebanon, and there was some property damage, a home and a building. That was the fragments did hit it and damage them, but no one seriously hurt. But what we're having here is now Iran is who orders all these, asked them to do this, and we'll see where this goes. But we have an uptick in the amount of terrorism that's being filed against Israel. So I will keep my eye on that. In addition, several days later, 2 Iranian drones came into territory of Israel. And as soon as they knew it was coming, they could see it, and they tracked it until it got into Israeli airspace, and they took them down. The first report was that they took, I'll speak of the first one, it says they shot it out of the air. Well, the report came back, no, they didn't shoot it out of the air. They used what is called a soft kill, meaning they have a mechanism to scramble the communications between the drone and Iran, and they were able to take it down and keep it intact. That's what they wanted to do, is keep it intact. And they look at it and they see if it had any armament on it to make sure that whether it was really coming in to do damage or not. So that has been happening, and it's continuing. The rhetoric is still very high. Israel is in a very precarious place right now. Not only because of this that I just mentioned, but because of internal strife. There is strife between the right and the left. There's strife between different political parties, more than I've ever seen in Israel. And Netanyahu is having very much difficulty putting it all together. You remember when I spoke and told you that Netanyahu had been voted in, but he had been voted in with a very high right-wing organizations that received a lot of votes. Therefore, he had to bring them in, and when I say right-wing, I mean very strict Orthodox Jews. And in order to do that, he had to make some he had to make some proposals for laws to occur that a lot of people don't agree with, even though they voted them in. So they're having difficulty politically right now, and they're having protests in Tel Aviv, and has been going on for 17 weeks ever since he was voted in. So there are some difficulties going on there. Any questions on? Yes.
Does that political strife cause any slowness in his reaction to his enemies?
I'll repeat what he did. The political strife cause any slowness in Netanyahu's ability to respond to the enemy outside the country? And the answer is definitely no. I think when you get all those coming in from 3 different sources, the political differences don't mean a whole lot at that moment. They come together and they do what they can in order to retaliate or take out the things coming in from the outside. But they still, after that's over, they're back to their political differences.